Let's start with a small exercise. It's a small hand exercise. So I invite you to start by taking your hand out, take any hand, right, left hand, and leave it limp. And see what this experience feels like when you leave your hand limp. Now take the same hand and clench it tight, and you can also clench your teeth. And see what this feels like when you clench your hand really, really tight. And now take the same hand and leave it open with your palm facing up in front of you. So what was the experience like when you had it limp? Did you feel a sense of dullness, a sense of lifelessness, a sense of maybe lethargy? And when it was clenched tight, then perhaps a sense of aggression, a sense of anger, a sense of passion, a heightened energy. And when it was right in front of you with the palm facing up, then I'm assuming you may have perhaps felt a sense of calmness, a sense of balance, and relax. So why am I sharing you about these three different kinds of energies? The reason I'm sharing this is because just like these three different kinds of energies that we experienced just now, we have three different kinds of happiness. And it's very important for you to know which happiness are you pursuing. So let me start by sharing the first kind of happiness. The first kind of happiness is the happiness of pleasure, which is the most common happiness which most people are pursuing, which is of sensory gratification. Maybe the pleasure you get from eating good food, maybe the pleasure you get from oversleeping, maybe the pleasure that you get from binge watching Netflix, all that kind of a sensory pleasure. So what does this pleasure do to us when we are constantly seeking pleasure, and how does it affect us? It gives us instant gratification, but in the long run, what impact does this have? Incidentally, this pleasure, this happiness of pleasure in yoga terminology is called Tamasic happiness. So what happens in that is when we pursue pleasure, we first and foremost experience, after we have consumed pleasure, after we have done the bhog, if I were to use the yoga terminology, then we feel a sense of dullness, because your senses have been numbed by too much of gratification. And then once you feel a sense of dullness, also what happens is that you never get satiated. You always want more and more of this pleasure. So there's a sense of craving and there's a sense of addictiveness towards pleasure. Whether it's food, sex, these are the most fundamental pleasures that we have. And the third thing that happens when we pursue pleasure is that we feel a sense of emptiness. It erodes us from the inside. We feel a sense of emptiness, a lack of energy, inner void. That's what happens when we pursue pleasure. So that is the first kind of happiness. Now let's look at the second kind of happiness. The second kind of happiness is the happiness of desire, where we are pursuing things that we want desperately. It's very important to us. Now this could be even our ambitiousness, our goals, which make us very, very we just focusing on what we want at the cost of everything else. In yoga terminology, this is called Rajasic pleasure, and this is very common in the corporate world, where the focus is only on meeting goals and deadlines and achievement orientation and just what this kind of pleasure, what this kind of seeking of this feverish energy is created. When we are constantly looking at only what we want, our desire fulfillment, we feel a sense of feverishness that I must get this, I must get this. Then what happens to us as a result of that is that when we don't get what we want, we get a sense of agitation, we feel aggressive, we get angry because our desires are not getting fulfilled. And if this continues for a long period of time, then there's a sense of burnout, because you can't sustain this frantic activity, this aggression, this passion, and all this leads to psychosomatic illnesses. You have your acidity and your hypertension and cardiac problem. All this is on account of over stressing our system for meeting our desires. So that's the second kind of happiness. Now let's come to the third kind of happiness, and this is the happiness of duty. And truly speaking, this is the true happiness, which is sustainable and long term. And in yoga terminology, this is called Sattvic happiness. So what's the quality of Sattvic happiness is where we learn to live a balanced life, which means we do our duty. We do our duty towards our body, which means getting up at the right time, getting good sleep, eating the right food in the right moderation quantity, doing our work, being responsible for our roles and relationships. So there's a balance in life. And as a result of this, the mind is calm and relaxed and peaceful. And what happens when you pursue Sattvic happiness, or the happiness of duty, is that we are able to discriminate what is good for us and what is not good for us. Because the mind is calm, it's peaceful, it knows what's good and what's not good. So these are the three kinds of happiness. First is the happiness of pleasure, Tamasic, makes us dull. Second is the happiness of desire, which makes us feverish and aggressive, which is Rajasic. And the third is the happiness of duty, which in yoga terminology is called Sattvic, which leads to balance, peace of mind and discrimination. So my question to you is, which happiness are you pursuing? Because that's the kind of experience you're creating in your life. That's what you need to ask yourself. So I'll end with a metaphor of life being like, living our life is like riding a bicycle. If you go too slow, you will not be able to balance and you'll fall off. And that's the Tamasic energy of pleasure. If you go too fast, then you're likely to have an accident and again you will fall off, which means the Rajasic energy of too heightened pace. And if you go at the right pace, a balanced pace, then there's a greater possibility that you will reach your destination. That's it for now. Namaste. Thank you.